Clearly, I'm State Representative Lou Lang. I'm the representative for this area. I've represented this part of Skokie, the southern part of Skokie, and Little Morton Grove and most of Lincolnwood and almost all of Rogers Park for 22 years. And this year I became the Deputy Majority Leader of the Illinois House, which puts me in the back room when all the decisions are being made. So I'm in a position now to really have some influence on public policy, and it's a good thing for my constituents that I'm able to do that. As you all know, this has been a very difficult year in Springfield. It started with the impeachment of a governor. Nobody wanted to do that. Nobody relished doing that. But when you have a governor who has complete disregard for the Constitution, complete disregard for the members of the General Assembly and other elected officials, and a complete and appalling lack of understanding of what his job is, and I add to that corruption, it was a step we had to take. I served on the impeachment committee in the Illinois House. Maybe some of you saw some of those hearings on television. And I've done a lot of things in 22 years that I'm proud of. Done a lot of things that have been more meaningful and more important to individual constituents in 22 years, but I must say that the most important single vote I've cast in Springfield in 22 years was for the impeachment of Rod Blagojevich, because it was just something that had to be done. It was something that was unprecedented. It was something that was very difficult to do. And I was proud to have been in the mix to bring the views of my constituents to that committee and to the House floor. And I think we did it in a fair way, an expeditious way, and we moved on. We moved on to a new governor who doesn't quite understand his job either, even though he has been training for it for over 30 years. He's a good man. Governor Quinn is a good man. There's not an ounce of corruption in him. He's honest, he cares, and he's got courage. What governor have you ever heard of who a month after he takes over his office declares, especially under these circumstances, that we need a new state income tax, an increased state income tax? And so whether you're for that increase or not, you got to give him some points for guts. And I give him plenty of points for guts. But then we got into the spring session, and we got into the fiscal problems of the state of Illinois. And the fiscal problems we have mirror the national fiscal problems. The national recession has hit Illinois badly. And now we're close to 11% unemployment in the state of Illinois. And when you have 11% unemployment, you've got people that are not paying taxes because they're not working. And that has led to a dramatic decrease in the revenue we are able to spend. And so we had something like a 25% cut in revenue to the state of Illinois this year. Some of it was made up for with what you've heard about, the federal stimulus dollars. Most was not. And so we went through the spring session, as you all heard and read and talked about, where we were talking about making huge cuts to important programs: aid for those with mental illness or developmental disabilities, daycare, senior citizens programs, help for those who have substance abuse problems. These are all grant programs, and there are thousands of them in the state of Illinois that do very good work, who are all going to be cut in a significant way. And it started out with a place where they were going to have to be cut by 70%, and then we got it down to 50%, and through some other tricks and sleight of hand and some borrowing of some money, we got it down to a much smaller cut. So 86% of the social service lines will be in place. Now you say, well, that doesn't sound too bad. Well, it doesn't, but it still is. Because many of the programs that are out there in our communities that are require significant state dollars to operate, and the dollars over and above what it takes to provide service just to keep those things operating, the rent, the electricity, and the gas, and insurance, and all those things take up a very significant part of their budgets. And so if you cut them 10 or 20 or 30%, you have a significant problem, and some of the social service agencies that serve our citizens are going to close. We tried to pass an income tax increase because we had to, but it didn't pass. There was one whole political party that would not allow any votes to go on that. I'll let you figure out which political party that is. Now, no one likes to vote for an income tax increase. Nobody wants to say to their citizens, you have to pay more money. But it would have been immoral and unethical and just plain wrong for us to allow agencies that service these people, kinds of people that I was talking about, particularly senior citizens, we can't allow them to shut down. So we had to do something. So the governor proposed a 2-year temporary income tax increase to get us through until the economy improves. Could not pass it, and so we were forced to borrow $3.6 billion to get through this fiscal year. We're going to pay it back over 5 years at a very, very, very low interest rate. So it isn't that it's going to cost us that much money to have done the borrowing, but it will mean that we have to find that money over the next 5 years in increments to pay it back. And we think the money's there. Some said, why don't you just cut? Why don't you just keep cutting until you're totally balanced and you don't have to borrow? You could not cut this budget enough to deal with a problem that was close to $9 billion. $9 billion is a lot of money, right? And so to find that kind of money would have been impossible unless we wanted to send less money to schools and we wanted to shut down important social service programs and we wanted to shut down part of state government. We already have a leaner and meaner state government than we have ever had. If you say to me, well, of course there's waste in state government, I would say to you, well, of course there's waste in state government. But it's a very, very, very low number compared to where it used to be. Nowhere near even $1 billion, let alone $9 billion. Nowhere near that. And so we had to do something, and so we resorted to borrowing to get us through this fiscal year. We hope the economy will begin to improve next year. There are signs that it will. But the national economy usually moves forward a year to 18 months before the individual states' economies do, and before the national numbers tend to filter down to our state and people hire people again in various walks of life, and they are now paying their taxes and there's more money moving through our economy. It takes a lot longer state by state than it does in Washington. So we have a year or two ahead of us of significant difficulty, and we will have to get through that difficulty.